Hello everybody, my name's Graham. I'm the lead engineer at IT consultancy we call Pebble IT, and today I'm going to talk about how you can automate yourself out of a job. So don't worry about taking notes, the slides will be provided at the end. If you have any questions, just shout out, lady at the back will give you a mic, but please hold your questions during the demos because they're all recorded because I'm a bit of a wuss and I don't want to do them live. So I've tried to keep it quite brief, so we've got loads of time for Q&A at the end. And I'm going to be skimming over several topics at quite a quick pace at a high level. So just think of this as a jumping off point on your journey into automating yourself into Nirvana, or whatever. Okay, so as you may have guessed from the accent, I'm from England. So here's my legal obligation to have a picture of the Queen. So I don't want to waste anyone's time. So I'm going to be very upfront about what I'm not going to be talking about today. I'm not talking about Munki, I'm not talking about Puppet, I'm not talking about DeployStudio, I'm not talking about auto package, I'm not talking about Casper, I'm not talking about FileWave, I'm not talking about Absolute Manage. So you might be sat there thinking, well, earth is he going to be talking about then? I'm going to be talking about the basic concepts you're going to need to be armed with to effectively use any of those tools. You're not going to be able to get very far at all without knowing about Daemons, LaunchAgents, some basic scripting, profiles, some packaging, and how to shove it all into an image. So, no one leaving? Good stuff. Right, so I'm sure you've all seen this screen hundreds, if not thousands of times. It's a blank canvas. It's waiting to be customized by an exciting new Mac user when they get home. Except in a lab or an office environment, any time spent doing that customization is wasting someone's time. Our clients have slightly different needs. They want apps in the dock, they want shortcuts to file servers on the desktop, they want the corporate logo as the wallpaper, they want the environment ready to go the minute someone logs in. Any time spent connecting to servers or finding apps is valuable teaching time wasted, or money lost. So what are our options to get this going? When I first started out doing this, I did it by hand. Got the Mac out of the box, sat there feeding disks in. Then I set up the user, I changed the wallpaper, I put Mail, Safari, Meeting Maker in the dock, I copied shortcuts to the file server onto the desktop. And if you're only looking after a small number of machines that don't get new users very often, that might be all you need. Worked out okay for me when I was looking after very small businesses. I was maybe setting up a new machine once a month. Then I went in-house for a couple of years. It's at that job that I saw this list here. And I started off doing it all by hand again. And it was okay. But then I got busy. I was setting up new machines every day. So I got onto the Google to see how everyone else was doing it. And it seemed like they're all using the default user template. So for those who don't know, the default user template is how the operating system creates new users. Creates the default dock, wallpaper, etc., etc. And it turned out I could put my own stuff in there, and it appeared on every new user I created. It was absolutely amazing. And on the face of it, it looks like quite a good option, really. I mean, it's really easy. You just click around, set up the user, and you're done. And you just need to get on the Google for like a couple of lines to stick in the terminal to set the permissions correctly, and you're there. Sounds awesome, doesn't it? Not so fast. There are a couple of caveats you need to be aware of. Default user template is only used when a new user is created. If you're working in environments where you're only setting defaults for your users and you don't really care what they do afterwards, that might not be a problem. Of course, that is until you need to change something. Maybe you need to deploy a shortcut to a new file server, or you've just gone to Creative Cloud and you need to stick the apps in the dock. Good luck doing that with the user template. You're back to walking around to each machine by hand or praying that ARD has decided to work properly for a change. And I cannot stress this enough. /system is Apple's directory. Unlike any other part of the operating system, there is no warranty on what happens there. They can do whatever they damn well please. Any changes you make may be changed or modified without any notice at all. You might be fine for months worth of updates, and then you install that one OS update that nukes your lovely crafted user template. So if we can't use the default user template reliably, we need to change our approach. This is the only place that the operating system looks for configuring new home directories. So our vector of attack needs to change. So depending on what you're trying to change, you've got a few options for triggering them. Launch Daemons are going to run a script or a command at any point, even the login window, as root. They can run on schedule, or they can look for a file system event. So file exchanges do this. As I said, they run as root, so they can do anything. So I'd use them to perform changes like binding to AD or setting the time zone, that kind of stuff. So this is a launch daemon. It's going to run user local Mac namer namer when the Mac boots, and then it's going to run again every 10 minutes. Who's feeling a little confused by that? I know I was when I first looked at them. So if you're more comfortable using GUI, there's LingOnX. Do make sure you get the version directly from the developer though, because the ones from the App Store are really limited in what they can do. So launch agents are very similar to launch daemons, but instead of running as root, they run as the current user. This means they're very useful for running commands that modify the current user's environment, setting wallpapers, modifying files in the user's home directory. This is going to be our primary tool for today. You can stick launch agents in /library, launch agents, which will affect all users. Or if you only want to affect one user, you can stick them in the home directory. And there's login and logout hooks. They're really basic. They're scripts that run as root every time the user logs in or logs out. There's nothing else to them. There's no scheduling, there's no other options. They do, however, have their uses. I have a logout hook that deletes a student's home directory in a lab setting when they log out. But you're probably not going to use them very often. And there's Chrome. Don't use Chrome. It's deprecated by Apple. It could go away at any point. Just don't bother using it. All right, so down to business. Our first job is going to be to set the wallpaper. So before we start, let's review our goals. This needs to work with 10.9. Majority of methods you'll find on the internet will only work with 10.8 and lower. Some of our users are using MacBooks, you're just using the internal screen. Some are on Mac Pros with 3 screens. We need to handle all of those. Any change we make must be applied to new and existing users. There's no point to doing all of this work and then having to walk around and change your existing machines. But we're not going to enforce a change. We're going to do it if we could if we wanted to, but we're going to let our users change their desktop to a picture of their cat or whatever they want. So you might be sat there thinking you have absolutely no idea how you start to tackle this problem. It's not like we're going to walk around and set it by hand, is there? So the best way to start thinking about automating any process on OS X is to find a way to do it on the command line. Once you've found a way to do it on the command line, you're most of the way there already. The terminal is about to become your best friend in the whole world. So you used to be able to use MCX or a profile to set the wallpaper, as the preferences are just stored in a plist. In Mavericks, these settings move to a SQLite database. So we have the fun choice of modifying the database directly, which I'm not going to do, or we can use Apple's approve method. To use Apple's built-in APIs, they can be quite complex, so I've written a script that will wrap this around for you. You just need to tell set desktops where your image is, and it will set all of the attached screens to your chosen image. So who knows what the backslash at the end of the first line means? Fantastic, yes. It's just telling the terminal that we're wrapping, treat it all as the same line. So that's all well and good, but we need to turn this into a script we can actually use. So today we're going to primarily use Bash, which at its simplest allows us to just do exactly the same as we would if we were typing it manually into the terminal. So the first line is telling the operating system which interpreters to use. There are several available on OS X, as well as Bash. There's Python, there's Ruby, and there's more. But they're all a bit out of scope for today's talk, so we're going to stick with Bash. So set desktops is a Python script, and we are specifying which particular Python binary we're going to run it with. This isn't strictly required, because the operating system will normally do the right thing with it. However, the person writing the script might not have specified which version of Python that script needs to use. Or you could be looking after a developer who has completely screwed up with their Python. They could have 15 different versions of Python on there. So we're just specifying we want to use the system one. Then we give the full path to where our script lives on the file system, and we pass the path argument to set the value of that to any image that is on the file system. That could be anything used in system preferences. So you might be wondering how we're going to run this script when the user actually logs in. We're going to use a tool called Script Runner. It's written by Nate Walk. It's quite straightforward. You point it towards 2 folders. One that contains scripts you want to run every login, and one folder you want it to run just once. And this is the LaunchAgent for Script Runner. So we've told it to run when the user logs in, the run at load section. And we're only going to run it once because we're not scheduled how often it should run. We pass 2 directories as arguments to the script, where our once and every scripts will live. And the actual script runner script has been deployed to /user local bin. How it gets there is something we'll cover a bit later on. And for comparison, this is what that launch agent will look like when you open it in Ligma X. So the basic rule of launch Daemons and launch agents is when you put spaces on the command line, it goes between its own string tags. So we only want the script to run once for each user. So it's going to be installed into the once directory. And I have appended the date onto the end of the name of the script. This is because script runner keeps track of each script it's run by its name. So if we wanted to ever update this script and run it again, we need to change the name of the file. This also gives us the added bonus of having the flexibility to be able to modify the script and not affect existing users, we just keep the same name. So that's the wallpaper, and it's relatively painless. So time for the doc. DocUtil was made by Carl Crawford, and it's a tool which is able to add or remove specific items from either one particular doc or all of the user's docs on a system. So to start off with, we're removing everything from the default doc. There's loads of stuff in there, and to be honest, it's a bit of a moving target. Apple seems to be shoving more and more in there every single release of OS 10, so let's get rid of it all. Now we start adding our individual items. You can specify a location if you like, but by default it's just going to pop it into the right-hand end of the doc. DocUtil will restart the doc after adding an item to make it show up, but we're going to be adding loads of items to our doc, so we want it not to restart. If we didn't do this, our script would still work, but it would take a bit longer to run, and people might get a bit of motion sickness because the doc goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So this is our final script. The first line should be familiar, and then we're looking at our first variable. We've done this because we're using the path to DocUtil over and over and over again. So we save a bit of typing because manual labour is obviously rubbish. And if the path to DocUtil ever changes, our script is a lot easier to fix. So we get rid of all the items in the doc, we add our apps in, then finally we stick the downloads folder back in because we took everything out and allow the doc to restart. And we're rattling through. So that's our wallpaper and doc sorted. So now we're going to give our users access to some file servers. There are things called AFP lock files. When you double click them, they just mount the file server. And they're just a plist. And despite the name, they can be used to connect to any kind of server, SMB or NFS as well as AFP. So let's have a quick look at how to make them. So I start off with, I'm going to do a defaults right in the terminal. I'm going to specify where it should go and point it towards our file server. Then I'm going to do a get info on the file because we need to change file extension from plist to AFP lock. And I could leave it at this and it will work. You could double click on it, users get to file servers. But because all of our users are fancy creative types, they need to look pretty. So in /system/library/core services, you will find a file called coretypes.bundle. If you go in there, you find loads of icons. Shut up. And because I'm a bit old school, I'm going to choose NextServe. Because we've all got loads left. Do a get info on that, get info on our AFP lock file, and you just drag the icon over. And it looks pretty. And praise be, it actually works as well. What a surprise. Okay, so that's an AFP lock file. Now we need to actually get it onto users' desktops. So we're not going to copy it over by hand, obviously. So we're going to use the CP command for that. It's exactly the same as copying it in the Finder, but there's significantly less legwork involved. So its syntax is simply CP, your source file, and then your destination. So that's how we're going to copy it into place, but how are we actually going to get all of our scripts and this stuff onto the machines in the first place? For that we're going to use packages. So why do you want to use a package? Packages have several benefits over any other method of getting files onto your Macs. First off, they explicitly put it where it needs to be. There's no faffing about, and you're going to guarantee. Sorry, is that losing? Did something Did something sneak past the British to American translation?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Messing. I don't know.
I understand you, Graham.
Right, anyway, carry on. Everyone take a moment, calm down. Okay, so you're going to guarantee that files have got the correct ownership and permissions as well. Packages can be used by anyone with no training. Just double click on it. I mean, it's about as easy as it gets. And they can be used with virtually any management system, from something as simple as ARD to Munki or Casper, if you really wanted to. For me, though, the biggest bonus of putting your configuration to packages is the flexibility it gives you. You put your settings in your image, or if you get a new Mac with a weird old build on it, you can layer your packages over the top of that clean operating system, and you'll support new models from day zero, all using the same packages. So let's have a look at some options for making packages. Back in the day, Apple recommended you use a package maker to make your packages. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's there. There's Iceberg, that's a free one. From the same people, there's Packages. And if you need a paid-for version, there's Composer. But I don't use any of those. I prefer a tool called the Luggage. This is the heart of the Luggage, the makefile. We're essentially just describing what you'd do on the command line to get your files there, and it's going to convert it into a package for you. So why on earth would you want to use this weird archaic system over the pretty GUI apps that I just mentioned? Every time you make a package with a Luggage, you are going to get the same output from the same input. You're describing in a text file exactly what needs to happen. You're not directing a weird fleshy thing, us, where to click. There is a tool built in to make packages on OS X. It's what the Luggage uses underneath the hood. But the Luggage gives us a lot of functionality for free that we'd have to recreate if we use package build on its own. So getting the Luggage installed is actually quite straightforward. So first off, we're going to open up a terminal window and we type in git. Because we do not have the command line tools installed, it's going to offer to install them. Click the button, read the EULA very carefully, don't skip it, and stuff gets installed. And thanks to the wonders of video editing, it's sped up ever so slightly. Okay, so we're done. Go back to our terminal. And we're going to use git to clone the repository from GitHub. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. We're literally just downloading some files off GitHub. I should have typed a bit quicker. Okay, so when that's done, we're going to move into the directory we've just created. And it's going to type in make bootstrap _ files. It's going to ask for your admin password because it needs to move stuff around your system. And as long as you don't see any errors, you're done. That is all there is to get them going with the Luggage. And it's done. So making a package with a Luggage is quite straightforward if you're using a pre-existing makefile. So don't worry if you don't understand everything you see here right now. I'm going to point you towards some tutorials at the end. This is the makefile that we're going to use to create an installer for Script Runner. We've set the title of the installer window, the name of the package, the identifier and the version. You'd have to do that in whatever tool you used. The more interesting part to us is the payload section. We have two payloads. The first is referenced later on in the script, but to install the launch agent that lives in the same directory as our makefile, we just use that one line. The Luggage knows about loads of common locations to install things on a Mac, so we just need to give it that one line to tell it, and it will set the ownership and permissions and drop it in the right place for us. So underneath that, we're going to actually install Script Runner. So we've already seen it's a one-liner to get something off Git. And sorry, I thought you had your hand up. Okay, so we've seen it's one-liner to get something from Git. So we've already seen that it's really quite straightforward to run stuff in the Luggage. So we can get this to do it on its own. We could clone by hand if we really wanted to, but that's a manual step. Manual steps are really dull and tedious, so we can just get the robot to do it for us. So line by line, do a git clone of the repository. We copy the file, Script Runner to use a local bin, set the ownership and permissions, and we clean up after ourselves. So if we're using package build, or most of the other GUI tools I've just mentioned, not only would we need to manually clone the repository, but we'd also need to manage the creation of /user/locals/bin. Because, as I said, the Luggage knows about all the common locations, On line 13, we've just inherited that. So no one's actually making the package. Get back into your best friend, the terminal. Change into the directory that has our makefile. And just type in make package. Stick your password in, and the robot makes the package for you. You don't care about any of the output because it's just happening in the background. And there's our package. So the point of the luggage is that we can reliably make the same package every single time. If we need to make a change, we can compare the two makefiles side by side in an app like Kaleidoscope. We can easily see what's changed. We can use source control if we want to. We can start thinking of our packages like code. So during a conference, you might have heard people talking about MCX. That's how we used to configure our Macs. And yes, it does still work, but Apple says you shouldn't be using it anymore, so we're going to do what the fruit company tells us to. So we can use profiles. You have a couple of options for making profiles. There's Profile Manager. It's not just directly for managing your Apple devices. I don't use it for that at all, but it can also make profiles for you that you can download using other methods. Very straightforward, turn Profile Manager on. I have a 10.9 server and a VM on this machine just for generating profiles with Profile Manager. And if you're going to want to modify the contents of a profile outside of Profile Manager, because they're just plain text files, don't sign them. You just have to. You can open up in the text editor once that's unticked. So after you've made your profile, download it. It's really cryptic how you have to download it, so I thought I'd better highlight it. There's also MCX to Profile. It's a tool created by a chap called Tim Sutton. It can take existing MCX settings, or as we're going to use it for, a preference file, to create a profile. So here's how you use it. Let's say you've configured Office 2011 not to auto-update. You've gone through all the windows and you tick the boxes and it all looks lovely. You can run MCX to Profile against the plist that generated, specify your unique identifier for your profile, and you're going to be given a profile you can chuck out to your clients. This profile is going to manage the auto-update preferences for Office 2011 often. This means the preference will be set at least every login, often more. There are lots of apps which weren't written fantastically well, which can't take always preferences. So this allows you to get around that problem. And the profiles themselves are just p-lists. Like I said, they're easy to edit. Just crack them into a text editor. Once you've got your profile, you're obviously going to need to install it. To install a profile using the command line, we're going to use the profiles command. Just give it the install flag and tell it we're installing from a file. You can also drop your profiles in this directory. You delete a file in this directory called .profilesetupdone, which lives in the same directory. And any profile that's in there is going to be installed next time the Mac boots up. So we've got methods to install profiles when the Mac's on and when it's turned off. We can put this all together in a package that's going to handle both cases for us. Make-profile-pkg was also built by Tim Sutton. I actually have no idea how he's got any time left after he makes all this stuff. All you need to do is pass your profile to the script and it's going to spit out a package that you can throw at your clients. So we've got apps configured, we're managing the dock, and we've got our desktop and wallpaper configured. And that's most of our user level configuration done. We just need to change some system settings now. So sometimes we only want to run script once. A good example of this is when we buy Interactive Directory, or if we set the system's time zone and time server. A payload-free package is, as the name suggests, a package that doesn't actually install anything. It just runs commands contained in its post-install script. So the first thing we're going to do is set the time zone. If you run through the OS 10 setup wizard, obviously that's going to be done for you. But if you skip the setup wizard, for example, if you're deploying an image, you're going to need to set it yourself. So it's pretty straightforward to set your Mac to the correct time zone. Obviously, this was not for here, but there you go. Reminds me of being at home. So, it's easier and easier to make this into a script we can stick into our payload-free package. Just pick the bash bit at the top. And this is a Luggage makefile for building this payload-free package. We literally just need to tell it about the post-install script. It's going to do everything else for us. We don't need to worry about anything else. Printers. Everyone excited? I love printers. They're great, aren't they? Great printers. But fortunately, once you've finally found a working driver and got that driver installed, it's actually not that difficult to set them up. This probably looks like an absolutely massive script to you, but you just need to edit the first few lines at the top. Set the system name for the printer, the GUI display location, the friendly display name for it, stick in the IP address, and tell the OS where it can find the driver. And you're done. It's actually really easy. SSH is quite useful. If ARD ever dies, which obviously never happens, SSH gives you another way into your Macs. We're going to use system setup again. You will find yourself using this binary loads when you start automating more and more parts of your configuration. And ARD, our most reliable friend. Fortunately, it is still quite useful. Each Mac has a tool called Kickstart on it, which you can use to set up ARD access. Here's the really tiny, quick commands you need to use to set up ARD access. Obviously, there's hundreds of options on it, and I have linked to a decent page on Apple's website to get this set up at the end. So, everyone knows what a welcome wizard is. A series of screens you have to go through in the Mac's first booted. So give your email address to Apple so they can send you lots of lovely emails and all that sort of stuff. But I ain't got time for that, so the welcome wizard will only run if this file is not on the system. So this clearly is not technically a payload-free package. I mean, we are actually creating a file, but it's only going to be a blank file. So as long as the file exists, whatever the contents, the welcome wizard is going to be skipped. So we're making the directories we need to exist, and we're just using the touch command to create a blank file. And we also don't want users to be prompted to set up their iCloud accounts when they first log in. I mean, these are our machines, they're not theirs. To skip the iCloud setup, we're going to use a profile. This is the most important part of the profile. We're setting a preference for com.apple.setup-assistant once on a date last year, so it's going to be applied immediately and just once. We're setting a couple of keys to say we've seen the cloud setup screen and what OS version we've seen it on. So some packages, like payload-free packages we've made previously, can only be installed on the currently booted machine. This doesn't mean we can't put them in an image though. So I've built a tool that will install any package at first boot. And as I clearly have a slightly weird thing for automation, you can store your options in a plist as well. This is our settings plist. We've got an array of package locations. The name of the final package, the identifier, and the package version. And to make the package, we just need to tell the script where to find our settings. I mean, obviously, yes, we could pass all of these options on the command line, but once again, we're trying to save ourselves a bit of work. So now having seen all these command line tools, you're probably thinking I'm some sort of weird anti-GUI obsessive. So it's time to see some GUI tools that are useful in our new workflow. You'll notice so far we have not made an admin user. Per Olufsen made create user package just for this task. And it's clearly really difficult to use. You just fill in the boxes. That's it. Click save, you get a package. Nothing more to it. But we still need a way of getting software into packages we can use in our new workflow. Some software does come nicely packaged, but some is distributed as drag and drop apps. Some, like Flash, comes in something a lot stranger. We could package things up with the Luggage, but there is a much easier way that lets someone else do all of the work. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about auto-package, but I lied. So there we go. Auto-package is thanks to the work of Greg and Tim, along with many other people who've created recipes to packaging various pieces of software. We don't use anything for too complicated today. We're going to see how straightforward it is to package a common drag and drop app like Chrome. So just download auto-package from GitHub and install it. It's very straightforward. So once you've got auto-package installed, you can start off making packages. So we need to add some recipes first. I'm going to add the built-in recipes first, and it's going to get them off GitHub. And once I've added the repo, I can list all the recipes to see what I've got and what I can do with it. If you don't find what you need, you can do a search to find other repos. But fortunately, the one we need is in there. So I'm going to run this for both of these so you can see exactly what's happening. And please bear in mind, this is real time, so it's going to take a couple of seconds, but I just want you to see how quick it is to make a package. And we can do this repeatedly as well. Auto-package is smart enough not to keep downloading it. It'll let us know if there's a new version. Let the robot do all of the work. So while we are sat here looking at very interesting green text on black window, has anyone got any questions? Go for it.
Have you heard of the fact with the iCloud setup skip that you can just do 10.9.9, and if it's a version that's high enough in the future, you can therefore not have to go back in and update it for each new release?
The question was, did I know that I could just put in 10.999?
I heard that that works. I had not tested it as of yet myself.
I haven't used that either.
Okay.
I normally do that with Puppet anyway. But.
Right.
Okay, so it's told us it's download Chrome. It's got a package, told us where to find it. We did very little work. No manual labor whatsoever. So, sometimes a Mac needs to be wiped. I have a clean OS installed on it. Somehow our users have managed to completely destroy the machine. Don't know what they did, but it's now smoking, it doesn't work. For those times, there's auto damage. It's also made by Per Olufsen. So why use auto damage? And don't ask me why it's called auto damage, because I don't know. So why do you want to use this over your traditional gold master method of making images? Auto damage takes packages as its input, which means the same packages we've already made that we can use with ARD or install with Munki can also go into auto damage. Images built this way have never been booted, which means you don't have to worry about clearing out even the machine-specific rubbish that's left behind. Just click the build button, go. So, who makes Goldmaster images here? I'm sure there's more.
We're afraid.
Don't be afraid. We're all friends. We'll have a love-in afterwards. It's going to be great. Now, how long does that take? Do you delegate it out to someone else? How do you know it's perfect every single time? What happens when a new OS comes out? Do you spend a whole day building your images again? This is what we've been working towards. A way of being so agile, we can support a new operating system as soon as it's been downloaded. And we've cut out the single thing that is most likely to ruin our image. Us. So let's take a look at building an image with auto damage. Drag on your OS 10 installer app. Drop on all the packages we've made. Click build. Tell where to save it. Stick in your admin password and off you go. So as well as everything we've already seen, I've got printer drivers going in here because printers struggle without printer drivers. And I've got a copy of Keynote, Office 2011, and an update for Office 2011. And this should have been quicker.
I think you sped up that progress.
No, that is totally real time. Oh, honest. No, that was probably about 15 minutes. So we need to get this. We've got an image now. It's great, perfect. But we need to get it out there. We could use target disk mode. I mean, using disk utility, file wave lightning, something like that. Really fast. Thunderbolt, SSD to SSD. It's really quick. But you can only do one Mac at a time. If you want to image lots of Macs at once, you're probably going to need to use NetRestore. So NetRestore images are created using system image utility. That lives in the system folder in every Mac. There is weirdness though if you open it directly. So open it via server app. I don't know why it doesn't work, but it doesn't. Make sure your auto damage volume is selected. Choose NetRestore. Hit continue. Give your disk a name if you want to. Read the URL very carefully. Agree to it. And choose where to save it.
Can I make a comment here that the path is not created automatically, by the way, unless you have previously started on that root service. So it'll sometimes prompt you, or if you've launched it on OS 10 client, it'll just prompt you to save it on your desktop. And
yes.
That's the right place to have it.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Where was I?
You're building an image.
Thanks. I've missed my whole demo now. The one thing I said not to do. Where were we? Okay, so. All right. Well, we've made our NetRestore now. It's quite straightforward, and now we're actually going to NetBoot. So once again, this is obviously completely real time. We're going to restore our image.
SSD Thunderbolt, right?
That's going to boot, and we'll start installing our first boot packages. I'm going to go through them all, and we'll notice that one fails. That's because I'm stupid and didn't specify the order correctly. Obviously, our Office update can't install until Office is installed. But it's going to be able to do it on the second go anyway. So I thought it was a reasonable failure to leave in. Once our first boot packages are installed, we can log in with our super secure password of password. And we are going to have ARD set up. Our printer is going to be there. SSH is going to be turned on. Our apps are there. You can fit things on the desktop. Our wallpaper is going to change, and our dock is wonderful and perfect. I know. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've barely scratched the surface of automating your processes. There are a few technologies you should be looking at once you've mastered the techniques we've covered here. Louis.
Just a quick question about the first run script.
Yep.
You mentioned the order was not correct in your first boot script, but
yep.
Doesn't the auto damage install that already, or is that auto damage creating the first boot script?
The first boot package is put into auto damage. That's to get away with the weirdness that's in the Office installer, because it tends to fail. So we're installing it at first boot rather than into the image.
Got it. But you still had dropped in Office and...
No, Office was within the first boot package.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay. So, a few things you should be looking at once you mastered everything we talked about today. Seriously, just look at Munki. It is the best way of getting your Macs full of lovely software. There's nothing better. Just save your life. Just do it. If you have to image hundreds of machines, you're probably going to have more than one build to deploy, which means NetRestore probably is not going to work for you. DeployStudio can help you manage your builds, create workflows, and customize your builds. Generally quite useful. And what you've seen today is only auto package at its most basic. Once you get into Munki, you'll quickly see how you can quickly build your whole update workflow around auto package. I don't import software updates manually into Munki. Auto package just checks for me and the robot does the work for me. Go. Who has questions? Please say someone has questions. Sorry, can we get the microphone down here, please? Thank you.
Regarding scripting, I see a lot of times scripts start with, when you set the path, $3. Can you explain a little bit what that is and when you should and when you shouldn't use that?
That's specifically when you're putting a post-install script into your package. So that refers to the volume that you're installing it onto. So if you are making a post-install script that may be installed to a volume other than the boot volume, you should use $3.
So just a statement to reinforce the Office not being installed as part of auto damage. Noel Alonso in Saudi Arabia, by way of Spain, came out with a fixer for the Office installer so that it would work in the pre-boot context. Just like adding $3 as a variable used in a package installer. There are a list of those of how it refers to itself as the script, the directory it's running from. Those are well defined within how the environment that a script is running in. Office and Microsoft deemed not to make that a priority, and so they assume a running volume, an admin installing it, not being at the login window. So Noel Alonso put something on his site. He fixed it for Service Pack 3. The techniques did not change because Microsoft did not change them in Service Pack 4, so they do still work, and I use that to install Office as part of my auto damage workflow.
Okay. I'll put links to that at the end.
Cool.
Anyone else? I'll run it. I don't do exercise much.
Is there a reason, if you aren't imaging tons and tons of machines, to have DeployStudio? Because it looks like there's so much you could do on just setting all your configurations through Munki and through those packages.
You do get some cool things for free with DeployStudio, like binding to AD, that sort of stuff. But if you're just installing software, and I only have one image, and everything then goes through Munki and Puppet. It depends what you're more comfortable with. If you're happy using Munki and using all your configurations and that, yeah, you don't need it. Just get you your own.
Yeah, I'm just going to hold on to this mic. There's another pack, right? The thing about DeployStudio and System Image Utility is it's a good thing to inspect. You can look at how they're accomplishing certain things. DeployStudio has recently gone to Objective-C for all of its little modules, its little mix-ins of what pre-canned workflows they have. But it's good to just use it as a reference to say, okay, how are they accomplishing the same task? You can then look and say, how would I achieve this outside of that tool? If you can get things to mostly work inside of a patch management system that can therefore be almost self-service, definitely do so. It feels like a heavier operation to have to net boot and or find some way to get the runtime going for DeployStudio. It's just my own advice. Pardon me for rocking the microphone.
Absolutely. My AD bind script is mostly stolen from DeployStudio.
But System Image Utility also, the profile installation that they recommend as part of their workflow, number one, it's inspectable because it's still in bash inside of there. But number two, it tells you that they actually have a cleanup process to make sure that you can do that on next boot, apply all these profiles at boot, if it's a system profile.
One back there.
Have you found any problems changing your MCX to profiles?
Not really. We haven't been heavy MCX users, to be honest. Most of it we just recreated our profiles. We haven't done much conversion. But if you are using just Profile Manager, you are going to have problems because Profile Manager is incredibly limited. However, if you're building your profiles by hand or using MCX profile, the script, they're roughly similar.
How are you handling your icons on the menu bar, like the Wi-Fi icon and like Time Machine?
I don't.
You don't?
Don't touch them.
Script runner for me for just like keychain access, just getting that lock in there. But if you essentially if you double click inside a system library for services menu extras, that's essentially what I'm doing by saying open on logging.
Okay.
The same tool that he used, that per user, you would have an action occur. That's how I did that one. There is also managing menu extras is the MCX.
Yeah, but now if that's only if you're using an open directory, right?
No.
So how are you converting that into profiles?
It's a long story.
Okay.
But Patrick Fergus in IRC is the link beneath my wings when it comes to a lot of things in MCX and how he looked at how those changes can be enforced by a directory service. Doesn't need to be open directory necessarily, or group manager, which still somehow lives on. But there is options in Workgroup Manager. There's additional options that have been there for years that you can add from System Library Core Services Remote Management. Was the name of it?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Sounds about right.
so a lot of things are available if they're in the library preferences folder. If they're elsewhere on the file system, you may need to MacGyver it.
Okay.
Down here.
Just a quick question about your Python script in the beginning. You have an
Yep.
option for setting something to only run once. What are you actually doing when it runs once? Is it creating a file somewhere on the system that
Wait.
Python checks, or are you putting that in
You
a
mean
database?
the set.starts running once? That's some script runner that's only specifying it should run once.
Okay.
The set.start script actually has you can keep running it over and over again. Script runner will create a plist in the user's home directory with the script it's run.
Okay.
So just a quick question. I'm making some never booted images, but I need to install a custom certificate into them for lots of fun reasons, and I'm having real issues with security and you really don't necessarily have first boot, installer to run in that environment. So have you dealt with any of that, or has anybody dealt with any of that? How is that?
I would do it at first boot, but
Okay.
Well,
So just if you're net booting it, just let it run first boot every time it runs and redo it every time.
yeah. Well, your first boot packages can do that for you because once the machine's up, it's up,
Right.
and that'll only run That'll only run one time. So, it's literally its first boot. But I don't know if anyone else has any.
Yeah, you want the framework to be live on the running system so that the security binary does the quality assured way of adding that to the certificate store.
Yeah, because even if you're live, you can't point it to another volume with security. I found that out even though there's a switch, and so at least in 10.4, I can't get it to work.
That's the point. The first boot script is running on the booted volume.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm even as lazy as copying it to 10 first. I think I'd run it straight out of the package.
Yeah. And I could do all that. It's just that I'm actually using that as a net boot image, so I didn't know if that was going to be a problem in that environment.
Yeah, once you're up on first boot, you're up.
Okay. Thank you.
If you want that make file, if you follow his advice about the luggage, we can share it.
You showed that you're using DocuTil
Yes.
for doc stuff. You can also do doc stuff in Profile Manager,
You can.
like with profiles.
Mhm.
So, are you using it DocuTil instead of the profiles because of like your ability to control it more, or
Yeah.
what's the reason there?
DocuTil, it's not an all or nothing proposition. I mean, yes, in this case we are removing everything and managing it first time. But let's say I was going CS6 to CC. I could specify to take out all of the CS6 apps and replace them with their CC equivalents. So it's a lot more configurable. We've got one down the front. I could do.
Oh yeah,
That'd be a lot easier.
So, yeah, are there certain? Oh.
Thank you.
Are there certain packages or scripts that should be set into the image as opposed to later on? Like we're just talking about first boot, as opposed to being baked into the image.
So are there some which should always be put into the image, you say, or?
Yeah, like they were talking about the Microsoft installer. About
My preference, if I was, first off, I would normally just put Munki in there and Puppet, and that's it, and let those two tools do everything else. But if you are putting stuff into the image, if it works, put it in there. I mean, it's going to be a lot quicker. Say you putting Final Cut on there or something's pretty chunky. It's quicker to do a block copy on when you're restoring it than it is to install the package. But the first boot package exists because not all packages are created equally, basically. So if it can be, put it in your image. But it's up to you. It's so you can be flexible. Once you've got it in a package, that's the main bit. Then you can do whatever you want with it.
I'm going to ask a question that I know the answer to, but I think other people are thinking this question. How do you know the difference? How do you know which packages are going to work baked into the image and which packages are going to need to be postponed to first boot?
Try them is what I would do. Yeah, and yeah, I'm not going to slag off. I've done enough of that already today. I'm probably going to get in trouble anyway.
This is just a comment on the certificates. I've been putting my certificates into profiles and installing the profiles, and it seems much more reliable because then the system handles installing the certificate and doing all the stuff. So if anyone looks at doing that, it seems a little more stable.
Yes, that'll work too. Go on, I'll repeat the question.
If you modify profiles by hand when you install them, you get this warning that says unsigned certificate in system preferences. Does it actually matter for?
The question was if you modify unsigned profile, because signed profiles are encrypted, you get a warning saying it's an unsigned profile. Doesn't matter. You get red text if you can live with the red text. Okay, close your eyes if you can't.
I was paranoid about that, and Greg pointed me to a post of someone who found a way of
signing the cert just like you would sign a package. I'm assuming it's a similar mechanism under the covers that lets you make it so that it's supposed to be trusted if you have that sort of self-signed cert even on the system. So there's a way to be retentive and and make it so that you have a nice interface for the end user.
Who else? Anyone? We've got plenty of time.
Also link to Alistair's annex in your notes, please.
Annex, is that
Yes. You are annexed to his presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I should stick your name on the slide.
All right, checks. Since there are many smarter people in the room than me, I would like, in a lab environment, to have all of my bookmarks come across everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not touching the machine, how can you make that as a package?
You've done this recently, haven't you?
Yes.
For England! So.
Do you want to swap? Shall we just... Why don't you just stick this on? There we go.
Last time I'm told to stick this on.
The snipers.
So, script runner, like he said, because this is Graham's show and not mine, is a way of saying, per user, I'd like to do something. I have a script that says, hey, have bookmarks been created? If they've not, let's copy this template over the default bookmarks file. From that point on, end users can customize their bookmarks because I really don't mind. It's more about, like, auto-completing the URL so it doesn't try to do a Google search for intranet. But that is something that my boss laid down. Chrome and Firefox. Chrome is even more of a pain in the fact that you can manage it with MCX/profiles, but it doesn't respect the only thing that I wanted out of its management, which is the bookmark. The homepage was the one thing I couldn't get with Chrome plus MCX. Firefox, there is a great post, Nick McSpadden, who's here in spirit, about using a Firefox extension to perform all those customizations. I even include a certificate in there because Firefox has to maintain a separate certificate store because they're special. That works just fine. By the way, since it's my show again, why DocuTil, somebody had asked, versus profiles. DocuTil just does have the flash, but it doesn't have the sometimes on first boot hitch of taking a reboot/logout to apply. Sometimes when you're applying MCX, it requires a reboot before it kicks in. That makes people feel they don't get warm fuzzies from that. They feel like, hey, I'm enforcing it, and yet it takes a reboot or something. So DocuTil is a way to know that it's enforced, because as long as it runs, it's going to cut the mustard.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll come on that one.
I was just going to real quick. Is this going to be up anywhere so we can get to it?
Yes, I'll put the slides on my side.
On the iCloud setup routine, if you run that on a machine, is it going to be true for multiple users on a machine? I raise this because I administer an XAM with 22 clients and dozens of network users who move from machine to machine, and every time they log on the first time on a machine, that will pop up. And so I'm trying to eradicate it for all of the users.
Yes, it will be gone. It goes.
The way that the profile is set to apply is it will be across the system.
Anyone else? Don't be shy, guys. Okay, then. I think we're done. Alistair, have you got anything else to add?
Sure.
Since you... Oh, what a shot. Here we go.
What? You guys don't want brownies? Get out of here. No. One last thing. So Mr. Reimer? Yeah, Reimer, thank you. Pardon me, I should have been at your session then, I wouldn't know. He might have the record. So who makes really large images in here? Really, 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 really large. How many gigabytes? 238. You got bigger? That's why you get the front row seat. So what's that? Right? That's not a lot. Demonstrably, that's not a lot. My answer to like what you should include in an image, what you shouldn't, is you got bandwidth. How fast is it going to move? If I have to update it all the gosh darn time because they come out, I'm not going to put Firefox in a gosh darn image. There's just no reason to do so. Plus, it's in the megabyte range. If you're talking about the gigabyte range, you might want to hold off. But did you cover that as part of your presentation?
Yeah. That's basically the same thing I talk about. Is the more static it is. So, for example, Logic Pro has.
Hold on.
Yeah. Okay.
We want to keep you on the videotape.
Yeah.
Oops.
And
there were 3.
And then there were 3. Yeah.
I'm just going to go.
So understand that I'm trying to make my image thinner than the 80-odd gig payload it is. My total payload is about 110. And so things like the sounds and loops and instruments in Logic Pro, for example, those are perfect for an image because they rarely change. Of course, they did change in the last year and a half. But these are things that they're slow to deploy, and so if you have a slow network or you have a huge payload, as those things increase, you consider, should those be in the image? Am I, the first thing that's come, I used to try to do almost everything, but Firefox, Flash, all of these things don't go in my image, right? I tend to use, I haven't got into Munki yet, that's certainly my goal, but that I would use DeployStudio, the package installers, and tell it to do it on first boot, which was also accomplished the same way, the first boot package that Graham was talking about. So for me, it's how much now can I take out of my image that I can leave or run as first. How much? I guess it's not even take out of image. How much can I run at first boot? As opposed, and then it's the big hefty stuff that I leave in my image right now. And so I'm going to still be using images for a while.
Richard Drivers, another great candidate.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, you're right. You're right. So I have Epson photographic printers and Xerox color lasers. Those 2 gigs get dropped into my image because I have enough space, and then I use a script to create the printers in a first boot situation.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Just wanted to add to this conversation. It's kind of the same point as about user templates versus scripting something. If you add something to the image and then you also add the same package to Munki or to something, then you have to maintain it twice. So if you change something, you change it to Munki, and all your current users are getting. So you gotta change it to DeployStudio, and then if something's not working right in one place or works in the other, then something went wrong. So at least we tried to put everything possible into one place, which is Munki. That way, anything you could run at first boot, stuff like changing the wallpaper and the dock, if you put those packages into Munki, then you only have to maintain them in one place and do as little as possible in the image itself. Obviously, really big packages take a lot of bandwidth, are probably good for images.
Absolutely. Go talk.
So do you have any experience setting up the Munki server on a VM as opposed to like a hard physical Mac Mini server?
Yeah. On a Raspberry Pi?
I actually have done, yeah. I don't use physical machines at all. My Munki repository is actually in Amazon. Yeah, it's fine. You just follow the instructions are the same. On the Munki wiki, it tells you how to set stuff up. It's just a web. Munki is a web server. If you can install Apache on a Linux box, it'll work. And it works really well.
Use Linux for it then on the VM?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, was that, or was you talking about OS 10?
Yeah, sure.
No, it works well. I mean, it's all the intelligence on the Munki client. So the web server is really low powered anyway. It doesn't take much horsepower at all to run it. It's just how much data you're chucking through it. Anything else? Can I grab the big one? Send the Vicar to the judge. Thank you.
Just a comment on updating. If you were to build things in with auto damage and then realize that one of your package changes, just as long as you maintain good versioning, if you were to add it to a Munki repository, and continue with the same naming and, keep going up in your versioning, you can
post-flight,
post-play, update it, and not have to worry about updating your auto damage. So if it's small stuff, it's not a big deal.
Yes, as long as you haven't broken Munki yet.
Yeah.
Because I've never done that. Anyone else? Could we pass it back?
Are you just pushing profiles out with Munki, or are you using some?
I use Puppet, but I wouldn't. It's not the easiest thing to get started with. So I did do a talk on it last year, which is still on YouTube, and I do cover installing profiles with that. But yes, you can use Munki with a post-light script to install it using the make-profile package. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay then, last chance. Okay. All right, thanks very much. All of the code that I have used in this talk is up on GitHub now. Obviously, everything apart from Office and stuff like that.